As is the case with all tennis superstars, not many players can brag about having a positive head-to-head score against them, and Pete Sampras is no exception. There are definitely a few players that do, such as Roger Federer, that has a 100% win rate against Pete, but they only played once at the 2001 Wimbledon. Roger, who was 19 years old at the time, got the better of Sampras after a tough match. Another player with a positive record against Sampras was Thomas Enqvist, with the score being 4-3 for the Swede. But there is a player that holds a winning record against Sampras after more than just a couple of games. That player was a German tennis legend, Michael Stich. Michael Stich is a former world number 2 that got the better of Pete Sampras on 5 different occasions. They had played a total of 9 matches, with Sampras winning 4, while Stich had won 5. Out of the 9 matches, they played 3 times both on clay and on indoor carpet, as well as twice on hard courts and only once on grass. Pete Sampras and Michael Stich were born just a couple of years apart, in 1971 and 1968, respectively. Both players turned professional in 1988 and advanced fast through the ranks. Sampras won his first Grand Slam trophy in 1990 at the US Open, while Stich won his sole Grand Slam championship at 1991 at Wimbledon. Their first encounter was at the 1991 ATP Tour World Championship in Germany. Stich was playing in front of his home crowd, seeking to top off a fantastic season with another major win after winning Wimbledon earlier that same year. Sampras, on the other hand, was a rising star in the tennis world who aspired to be a true contender on the world stage. The American, later known as Pistol Pete, has proven his worth and beaten Stich 6-2, 7-6. You're probably wondering how he did it. Well, the answer is simple, so keep watching to find out. If you're wondering why his nickname was Pistol Pete, this is why.
Becker, I think, was the nearest.
His incredible serve was just one of the reasons. How on earth did Michael Stich stand a chance against Sampras? You must be asking yourself. Let's dive deeper into their following encounters and see what was the secret behind the Germans' success. The second time these two legends faced each other was in 1992 at the World Team Cup in Germany. The match was an incredible showing of pure athleticism and tennis mastery. Stich lost the first set 6-7 but roared past Sampras in the following 2, with the final score being 6-7, 6-2, 6-4 for the German. In the quarterfinals of Wimbledon in 1992, Pete Sampras managed to get the better of Stich in quite an, so to say, easy manner.
Da ist es passiert.
The result was 6-3, 6-2, 6-4 for the American, but the show these two created out on the court was a sight to see. The constant serve and volley and the sheer power of both their shots were incredible. Stich played great tennis and served very well, so well indeed that he got the ball stuck inside the net. Talk about a powerful serve. Or is it maybe the net? Who knows? Maybe a little bit of both. But there is no doubt that the tennis played that day was great, but Pete Sampras was simply too good. The next encounter occurred just a few months later in a semi-final match at the 1992 Grand Slam Cup in Germany. Michael Stich was once again in front of his home crowd, which is something that will surely boost a player's confidence. The atmosphere in that arena was amazing, but the tennis played that night was even greater. It was a superb showing from both sides, but Stich managed to find the way past Sampras in 3 tiebreaks. The crowd erupted when Michael won, and the final score was 7-6, 7-6, 3-6, 7-6. The proof of his incredible game can be seen in the match statistics. A total of 80% of first serve points won, paired with a staggering number of winners, a total of 87, was the key to Stich's win over Sampras. Stich went on to beat Chang in the final and ultimately won the title after a not-so-great year. By 1993, neither player was able to string together 2 consecutive wins in a row. However, Michael Stich decided he'd change that. Both of these encounters took place in Germany once again. ATP World Tour Championship in 1993 and World Team Cup in 1994. What was to follow was one of their most memorable matches ever. Let us see what exactly enabled Stich to achieve such a feat. Keep watching to find out. The final match of the 1993 ATP World Tour Championship was a legendary one. Pure mastery was on display. Both players started off strong, but Stich got away with the first set 7-6 after winning the tiebreak. Sampras then came back even stronger into the second set and equalized with 6-2. What followed was just incredible by Stich. He utilized his biggest advantage, his powerful shots, to the fullest. Apart from power, he showed amazing intelligence and versatility in his game. Stich managed to find his A-game, and the effortless power that he generated on all of his shots was something that Sampras couldn't handle. Everything was just working right for Stich. He ended the thriller with another spectacular serve. and was crowned the winner of the 1993 ATP World Tour Championships. Upon a difficult loss, Sampras stated in a post-match interview that it's been a great year for him, but unfortunately Michael was just way too good for him that day. He also went on to say that he had some great chances in the third set, but Michael Stich just overpowered him with all of his shots, which gave him the confidence to ultimately win the match. All in all, Sampras stated that Stich was simply better than him that day. In 1994 at the World Team Cup, Stich was once again triumphant over Sampras, this time on clay, in another close match that went the distance. What was so great about this match? Despite being a match of the round-robin stage, it was a spectacular one. The energy of the crowd was on a level like a final match. The final score was 3-6, 7-6, 6-2. The entirety of the match was a showing of raw talent and skill from both sides, but the dominance of Stich when he brought his A-game was just scary. Officially, the last match between Pete Sampras and Michael Stich was played in Cincinnati ATP Masters 1000. As each and every single match between the two was an incredible one, this one was no exception. From the very start, it was obvious that both Pete and Michael came to grind for the win. After a very tough battle, Sampras won the first set 7-6, but Stich wasn't keen on giving up. He fought incredibly and implemented his advantages into his game perfectly. That seemed to be the answer to beating Sampras, as Stich won the second set 7-6. As the game went on, Stich just kept his game level incredibly high, to which Sampras had no viable solution. Stich had won the third set with 6-1. You just found out that Stich managed to string together 2 consecutive wins against one of the best tennis players of all time. But how is he able to do it? Let's take a look at just some of the key factors of Michael Stich's game that enabled him to achieve this. Stich was an incredibly competitive player, but isn't every top athlete extremely competitive? Yes, but Stich's competitiveness came from his past. He was originally interested in playing soccer, and tennis was just something he did on the side. Many stated that his attitude would stop him from achieving greatness in tennis, but in his teenage years he turned to tennis much more seriously, and that's when his talent really started to shine. He extracted motivation from people who didn't believe in him, which made him an even fiercer opponent. But let's not forget about his powerful forehand, superb single-handed backhand, his incredible net play, oh yes, and his effortlessly dominant serve, of course. We cannot not mention that. When taking a look at their legendary match during the 1993 ATP World Championship, the way Michael created space by moving Pete across the court was beautiful. His technique was also great because it seemed like every single one of his shots was just effortless. He simply utilized his ability to create an advantage for himself perfectly. Needless to say, once he got the opportunity to close in on the net, he did. Indeed he did, and he put those volleys away like they were nothing. Serve and volley was one of his best plays, and it worked like magic. How wouldn't it? With such an impressive serve, also the couple extra years of experience had worked largely in favor of the German throughout his rivalry with Pete Sampras. What was so special about Michael Stich? What made him a nightmare for Pete Sampras? Was it his incredible ability to utilize his own advantages while neutralizing his opponents? Was it the sheer power and precision in his shots? A combination of both, possibly. Michael Stich was a 6'4" guy with an excellent serve. His serve was super strong, which enabled him to rely on his serve and volley tactic very often. In a particular study, it was noted that in approximately 30 matches, his average point length was just 3.1 shots, which means his game was extremely quick and hard to deal with. In addition to this, Michael would win around 70% of points on his serve. This kind of play style was very difficult to counter for Pete Sampras, as he mostly relied on a similar game approach. There are discussions amongst tennis fans that Stich's serve was one of the most efficient serves in tennis. The way he seamlessly used the kinetic chain of energy and how he would transfer that immense energy onto the ball so fluidly. These are just some of the reasons why he's one of the best servers of his time. Both his forehand and his single-handed backhand were great weapons from the baseline. The style of tennis was different back then, but Michael excellently used hip rotation on his shots to maximize power, which is quite similar to some of the more modern tennis players. His game on the net was just icing on the cake. He squeezed the most out of it with every chance he'd get. Still not convinced? The proof of actually how good Michael Stich was lies in the autobiography of Pete Sampras himself. In A Champion's Mind, Pete Sampras states that his most feared opponent wasn't actually Agassi, his biggest rival, but rather the biggest nightmare for Pete was none other than Michael Stich. He stated that once Stich brings his best game, there is no one in the world that can beat him. Another testament to Michael Stich's potential and incredible game comes from Jim Courier in 1993. During a French interview for the tennis magazine May 1993, Courier stated yes, but when he managed to play his best tennis, nobody could compete with Michael Stich. I personally think that Michael Stich was an incredibly talented player, with the perfect technique that matched his aggressive playstyle and his powerful shots. Once he came to play, it was game over for the opponent. I think he's one of those players that could have achieved even greater things, but he never got the chance. Unfortunately, Michael had to retire much earlier than expected due to a shoulder injury. Nevertheless, the question still remains: what could have Michael Stich achieved had the stars lined up for him? Ultimately, there's no denying the greatness of Michael Stich, when he is praised by one of the greatest tennis players of all time, Pistol Pete Sampras. If Michael Stitch was actually so great, then how great was Pete Sampras? Make sure to check out the link in the description to find out.